Hey guys, it's Bella and welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all having an incredible day today. In today's video, we're going to be covering another Mystery Monday case, but before we do, I just want to thank today's sponsor, Function of Beauty. You guys know I swear by their shampoo and conditioner, but they have just released a game changer, customized skincare. So just like with their hair care, you fill out a 60-second quiz all about your skin and your skincare preferences, like if you prefer a micellar cleanser or a jelly cleanser, or if you prefer a gel, lotion, or cream moisturizer. Personally, I chose a micellar cleanser, a lotion moisturizer, and I wanted to target breakouts, evening out my skin tone, brightening, and smoothing. And I also chose to get no fragrance in any of my products because I'm really sensitive to that, which is just like the best thing about this product because it's going to be amazing no matter what type of skin you have, no matter what sensitivities you have, because it's customized to you. So yeah, once you fill out this quiz, they create a custom skincare tailored just to you. They don't match you to already existing skincare. They actually go ahead and blend the products just for you based on the information that you've provided them. And there's over 3.1 billion unique formula combinations, which is pretty crazy. They're also completely cruelty-free and vegan. They don't contain any parabens, sulfates, GMOs, or toxins, so it's really good stuff. And if you guys are interested in checking it out, make sure you head to my bio. I will have a link there that will get you an extra 10% off of your purchase, and it will also get you an incredible little like spa headband, which is just the best thing when you're doing your skincare, and it is just the softest thing I've ever touched. So let's go ahead and get into today's case. Today we're going to be talking about the case of Andrew Sadek, who was born in the small town of Valley City in North Dakota on the 22nd of November in 1993. After he was born, his family moved to Rogers, which is where he was raised on a cattle farm that his family owned, and he was described as a quiet kid who was super shy and just kept to himself. He had one older brother named Nicholas, and he was unfortunately killed at a railroad crossing in 2005 when he and his girlfriend were in their car when it was struck by a train at an unmarked railroad crossing. As I'm sure you can imagine, this had a really heavy impact on Andrew's life because he was pretty close with his brother. Andrew went on to graduate from Valley City High School and then enrolled at North Dakota State College of Science in Wapton in 2012 and began studying to become an electrician. During his first year at Dakota State, he was a dedicated student. He didn't socialize much. He lived on campus in a dorm in Nordgard Hall, which he shared with another guy named Drew Kugel. And Drew described him as a quiet kid who got good grades and liked to ride his skateboard around campus. Andrew's mum said that he was really timid, he was really quiet, but he was a really kind person. He was the kind of person that would just do anything for anyone. And she also said that he was really enjoying his time at school, that it was really helping his social development. He was coming out of his shell a little bit and making friends and becoming an adult. And he was really enjoying campus life. He was just enjoying like the freedom of it all, being able to come and go as you please, being able to spend late nights out without your parents like giving you a curfew or whatever. At some point in 2013, Andrew started selling weed, and he would often meet potential buyers in a campus parking lot. There is a law in North Dakota though that makes it a Class A felony to distribute drugs on a college campus. And this is like the sale of any amount is a felony in North Dakota, or was. I don't really know the laws now, but at the time it was definitely a felony, a Class A felony, and it could carry a sentence of 3 to 10 years and a fine of up to $20,000 depending on, how much and where it was and who he was selling it to, sort of thing, like whether or not it was a minor. Now, on 2 separate occasions, Andrew actually sold weed to somebody who was acting as an informant for the police department. So there was a task force called SEMCA, and they basically focused on local drug trades. They had a history of converting small-time dealers to confidential informants to reduce charges. So when they would arrest someone in possession of or intending to sell weed or other drugs, they basically offered a choice of going through with legal proceedings and facing charges, or they could choose to work with the police instead. Under this agreement, they would have to wear a wire and they would have to make a certain number of drug purchases, and they would have to coordinate with law enforcement throughout the entire thing to kind of set up so they could actually see the drug deal take place, so they could go and document the drug deal. And then after an appropriate amount of time had passed, the police would then go and arrest the seller and basically give them the same option. It was like, you know, a domino sort of effect. Now, Andrew wasn't one of the big drug dealers in town. The police weren't really that interested in him, but they were interested in using him to find out some more information. Andrew's first sale to the confidential informant was on the 4th of April in 2013. It was in parking lot number 4 of the school campus, or the college campus, and he sold them 1/8 of an ounce for $60. They then met a couple days later on the 9th of April, also in lot number 4 again, and Andrew sold him, I think, a gram for like $20. Police then waited an appropriate amount of time to talk to Andrew just so they could best protect the identity of the informant. So they waited until the 21st of November in 2013 to go and talk to Andrew and, you know, give him his options, basically. The police went straight to his dorm room, and Andrew was informed they had reason to believe he'd been selling weed on campus. Officers then asked permission to search his dorm, and Andrew consented. And in their search, they found an orange plastic grinder with weed residue inside. Andrew admitted it was his. They took it. They told him to come down to the sheriff's department the next day, and he wasn't charged. The next day, when he was due to come in, was actually his 20th birthday, which is so unfortunate to be interrogated by police on your birthday. It was the 22nd of November, and he was interviewed by Richland County Sheriff's Deputy Jason Weber. He basically told Andrew exactly what I'd said before, that he'd been caught selling weed to an informant on 2 occasions, that it was a Class A felony, and he either had the option to become an informant for them or proceed with legal charges. And he also, like, I feel like, you know, they kind of scare them into becoming informants a little bit, because he was like, you know, for these 2 tiny drug deals, like literally a gram of weed, one of them, and he's like, you know, you could face up to 40 years in prison and a $40,000 fine. Andrew then, as I'm sure like anybody in his situation would do, told him he was interested in becoming an informant, because Weber was like saying to him, like, you know, you could get jail time if you don't help yourself out. What we need you to do is buy drugs off a couple of individuals, and that's it. We can make a lot of this go away for you. And he said that he'll likely only get a misdemeanor of possession of weed if he were to go ahead and inform for them. Weber asked Andrew if he knew of anybody at the campus that sold weed that he could buy from to inform on, and Andrew listed a couple of people. He said there was one individual in particular that was known to sell, you know, slightly larger quantities of weed. He said I could go and try and buy 3 to 4 ounces of him, but Weber was like, no, don't do that. It'll be too obvious if you just randomly go and buy 3 to 4 ounces of weed if you've never done that before, which makes sense. Andrew also talks about a woman he might be able to buy from, and they asked him who his dealer was, and he said it was like some guy in Fargo. He doesn't actually know the dealer's name, but he has his number. So by the end of the interrogation, Weber signed Andrew up for this, like, you know, little thing that they had going on, and he told Andrew that he would have to buy at least 2 times from each individual he went to, and he would have to go to at least 3 individuals, and he would have to do this before the end of his next semester of classes. Now, Andrew obviously was like a little bit concerned that people would figure out it was him that informed, and Weber was like, don't worry, you know, no one's gonna find out who you are. We're very careful, just like we were about, like, you don't know who informed on you sort of thing. But you might have to testify in court against them. He did say that in all his time as an officer, he's never had that happen where he's had, you know, one of the informants have to testify in court, so it shouldn't be anything to worry about. And then said he wanted to go to the first person and buy a 1/4 of an ounce, or if he could only get 1/8 of an ounce, that was fine. Over the next 2 months, Andrew made 2 purchases of weed under this agreement. In November of 2013, just days after this conversation he had with Weber, he bought 1/8 of an ounce for $60 in parking lot 4 from an individual. And then in December as well, he also bought another 1/8 in the same parking lot from the same person. His third purchase was from someone he didn't know, that he didn't have any experience with. He bought 1/8 of an ounce from them in the car parking lot, the same parking lot that all these drug deals seem to happen. Like, these people really are not slick. But after this third purchase, Andrew started to withdraw kind of stop contacting Deputy Webber was kind of weird, considering Deputy Webber had explained to Andrew that he needed to contact him every few days, and that if he stopped contacting police every few days, that they would issue a warrant for his arrest. The deal would be off and he could face these 2 Class A felonies. So I really feel like if you had that hanging over your head, you wouldn't want to stop contacting deputies unless there was something up. Okay, so what makes this whole thing like really sketchy to me and makes me think that something's definitely off is that I know I said that he had to purchase 2 to 3 times from 3 to 4 different people. Somewhere along the time that must have got reduced because he only had 1 more buy until his agreement was done. So if you had 1 more buy, wouldn't you just get it over with and be done with it? That is why I think something's weird. His parents said that everything was really looking up for Andrew at this time, so it really doesn't make sense for him to stop contacting police, for him to, want to have these felonies hanging over his head when he's out around North Dakota looking for work as an electrician for when he finishes college, and he was like seeing a new girl and things were just going well for him. On the weekend of the 25th and 26th of April in 2014, he went from his school to visit his parents' place back in Rogers, and he spent the weekend with his parents, helping them tend to the cattle on the farm. And according to his parents, there was nothing unusual about him. He didn't seem stressed, he didn't seem upset, he seemed totally normal. Like, as far as they could tell, nothing was bothering him in any way. At around 6 p.m, Andrew left his parents' house. He told his dad he had a date that night. He hugged him, he left, and then at about 10 p.m, he had a phone call with his mum that same night, and they just had small talk. She was making sure he got back to campus okay. They talked about their data limit because it was coming up to like their monthly limit. And everything was just so normal. When they ended the phone call, they agreed to catch up again soon. So as normal can be, really. But this unfortunately would be the last time that his parents would ever hear from him. On the night of April 30th, Andrew made plans to go out with his friend Drew, his roommate, Drew Krugel, that I mentioned earlier. Now, Drew apparently had no idea about anything that was going on in regards to Andrew being an informant for the police. He had no idea. I don't even think that he knew that he was like selling weed or anything. Like, he didn't even suspect that he was selling weed or was an informant or any of that sort of thing that was going on. They went out, they met up with friends, and apparently it was just like a typical evening, good times, good friends. After they saw their friends, they went back to their dorm room, they watched a movie and went to bed. But that would be the last time that Drew would ever see Andrew. The next morning on the 1st of May, when Drew woke up, Andrew was nowhere to be found, but he didn't really think too much of it. He just thought that he'd like gone to see his girlfriend or something. It's college. They're not like tracking their roommates and their whereabouts. There's somewhere to be. They could be with friends, their girlfriends, a class, Drew did start to suspect that something was wrong though when he didn't go to any of his classes that day, and by that night he still had not heard from him at all. The next day, on Thursday the 2nd of May, Drew met up with some of their mutual friends. He asked all of them if they had seen or heard from Andrew, and nobody had. So he was really starting to get like a little bit concerned. And then the very next day, on Friday the 3rd of May, Drew and his friends ended up contacting campus police and reporting Andrew as missing. Campus police then contacted local police, who found some surveillance footage of Andrew leaving his dorm room on the 1st of May at 2 a.m. He was wearing blue jeans, a red Tampa Bay Buccaneers football sweater, and he also had a black and silver backpack with him. He was alone. It didn't appear like anybody was following him. It didn't appear like anything was off. Like, he seemed to be acting pretty normal in the footage. But his phone was off despite the fact that he had his phone with him. The Richland County Sheriff's Department led the investigation into Andrew's disappearance, and they had air searches, canine searches, they had people on foot looking, they had one woman call in about a possible sighting in North Dakota, but when they went to investigate, they found nothing. There was no signs of Andrew in all of their searches, in this woman's lead, nothing. And Andrew's family and friends were all super worried that something had happened to him, but police, on the other hand, thought that Andrew had fled to avoid his drug charges. Which, I don't know, it just seems so strange to me that he would flee when he only had one buy left to do. And that he wouldn't even have to worry about these charges if he just did that one buy. Like, why flee? Just do the buy. Now, there was definitely some talk about whether or not the way the police thought about Andrew's disappearance, like they thought he had fled instead of that he was missing. And there was definitely a lot of talk as to whether or not this impacted the investigation, because they weren't looking into him, or maybe they weren't looking into him as if he was a missing person, which I don't know about you, but I think that could actually be a good thing, because in like majority of these Mystery Monday cases, the police just don't look into missing people in that first time period, the most crucial time period of a missing persons case, as much as they should have. They just think, oh, you know, they probably run away, whatever, they'll probably come back. But if someone's fleeing, I feel like they might care more and want to find them more, which is so fucked up to think about. By Monday the 5th of May, the Richland County Sheriff's Department issued a warrant for Andrew's arrest. This warrant went public on the 9th of May, and it specified the fact that he was wanted for 2 counts of delivery of an illegal substance. And it wasn't actually until this point, when the warrant went live, that Andrew's parents actually found out about any of what was going on in terms of these charges. And they were super pissed off with police, honestly, that they didn't tell them this, considering their son was missing and they had reason to believe that he might be fleeing. Now, over the next 2 months, there were a lot of people searching, friends, family, volunteers, obviously police and detectives were all looking for Andrew, but there was not a single trace that was found of him. His friends, his family, his girlfriend, nobody had any idea as to where he would be. His parents went on TV to make a plea for him to come home, or for anybody that had any information to come forward. They said that they were sure that he wouldn't run away, though. They really didn't think that was like him. They thought he was really enjoying his life. Things were looking up for him. He had a girlfriend. He liked school. He liked what he was doing. So they were certain that he hadn't run away. And then on the 27th of June, police found Andrew's body. Police found him during a routine training assignment when police divers found his remains in the Red River near Breckenridge, Minnesota, which is just less than a mile from Wahepton. And just across the state line between North Dakota and Minnesota. Now, the Red River is just inside the Minnesota state line, making the distance between the Red River and Wahepton less than 15 minutes. And the discovery of his body definitely raised questions as to whether he committed suicide, whether he was murdered, or whether it was an accidental drowning. They did conduct an autopsy report, and this autopsy report, or the details of the autopsy report, was released 2 months later in August of 2014. The autopsy confirmed that it was in fact Andrew's body. His body was so decomposed that they needed to use dental work to confirm that it was him. The autopsy also revealed that he had actually died from a small caliber gunshot to the head. The autopsy, however, couldn't determine whether or not this gunshot was self-inflicted or not. Initially, police reported that Andrew was wearing the same black and silver backpack that he had been wearing in the surveillance footage when they had seen him leaving campus at 2 a.m. on the 1st of May. It was reported that his wallet was missing, and also that his clothes had changed from that surveillance footage. Now, his parents were extremely upset by the possibility of it being a suicide. They did not believe this was the case whatsoever. They said he had no suicidal tendencies. He had no reason to want to commit suicide. Andrew's mother, Tammy, also actually revealed some more details about the discovery of Andrew's body that the police did not disclose publicly, such as the fact that his backpack was actually filled with rocks. His arms were through the backpack as if, you know, he was just wearing a backpack normally, but the backpack was also tied to him, so like it was trying to weigh him down in the river. She was also the one who revealed that his clothing had changed. His red jacket was gone, and he was wearing a black jacket that nobody in his life could identify, not his girlfriend, not his friends, not his family. Now, to me, the backpack thing is what definitely makes me feel like this is a murder, because it seems like something you would do when you're trying to hide a body. That's just my opinion. In support of the suicide theory, police said that a .22 caliber pistol was actually missing from the Sadek family home, and they theorized that he had gone there to say goodbye to his parents, and that he had taken the pistol to then commit suicide with later. His parents, however, did not believe this was the case whatsoever. They thought that the backpack filled with rocks as well as the missing wallet were both signs that he had been murdered and that the body and the identity of the body were trying to be concealed. In December of 2014, Andrew's mother Tammy also released more information that she believed was evidence that this was a murder. So she said that within days of their disappearance, his parents were given the possessions of his car, which was found still parked on the college campus. She also says that upon taking the vehicle, they found that there were several inches of water found in the area in the boot where the spare tire goes. She also said that the carpet in the boot of his car, or trunk for Americans, I'm sorry, last time I said boot, they were all like, what is a boot? A trunk. Google is your friend, my friends. Anyway, I digress. She said that the carpet in the boot of his car was soaking wet. So she theorized that Andrew was killed. The murderer placed his body in the boot of his own car, drove him to the river to dispose of his body, and then tried to clean out the boot, which is why it was soaking wet. Tammy also said that a witness came forward to her saying that the night of Andrew's disappearance, she had seen 3 men cleaning out the boot of a car which had a similar description to that of Andrew's. Unfortunately, surveillance cameras near Andrew's car weren't working at the time. Now, Tammy and John suggested that North Dakota's Attorney General Wayne Stenningham, but they suggested that he investigate the task force, the way in which they handled Andrew's case, as well as suggesting that Andrew's murder may have been linked to one of the men who he had informed on. A panel of 3 longtime law enforcement officers was assembled and the case was reviewed, but little fault was found with the way the task force had handled Andrew's case. Wapton Police Chief came out and said that basically everywhere does this. There was nothing wrong with the way the task force was doing things, that it's totally normal. However, an official review came out saying that the task force should be placed under control of an agent from the Criminal Bureau of Investigations, and it was. The death of Andrew is actually suggested not to have been the only case, and that the police have mishandled the information in regards to these informants, and they aren't able to properly protect them, which has actually led to other deaths. Rachel Hoffman was a 23-year-old graduate from Florida State, and she was murdered on the 7th of May 2008 while also being an informant at the time. She was arrested by police because they found weed in her possession during a traffic stop, and then they searched her apartment, found more weed, a little bit of ecstasy, and so they gave her basically the same sort of options that they gave Andrew, that she could go to court and face charges, or she could become an informant. So she decided to become an informant. They wanted her to make a pretty big purchase. They wanted her to buy 1,500 pills, 2 ounces of cocaine, and 2 handguns using $13,000, which was provided to her by police. And unfortunately, things went really badly with this buy. She was monitored by police, but they ended up losing track of her because the sellers wanted to change the location of the deal. And she got into one of the dealer's stolen BMWs, and she was shot with one of the guns she was meant to buy, and her body was found 2 days later. After her murder, her family filed a wrongful death lawsuit against the city. Police were forced to admit that she had no training to work undercover, that she'd never met the 2 men targeted in the buy, and that she had no experience with coke or firearms and very little experience with pills. As a result of Rachel's murder, on the 7th of May 2009, Florida passed a law called Rachel's Law, and this law basically requires police to train people who are recruited as informants. And it also requires police to let these people know, these informants know, that doing this, informing on people, doesn't necessarily mean that they will get a reduction in their charges or that they will have their charges dropped at all. There was also another very similar case, which was that of Thomas Bearson. He was an 18-year-old college freshman at North Dakota State University in Fargo, and he was pulled over and they found weed and they found pills in his possession, and he was given the same sort of deal as Andrew and Rachel once again. He, just like Andrew and Rachel, accepted the deal, but very little details about his circumstances have been released. He was last seen on the 20th of September in 2014 at 3:40 a.m. walking away from a house party. His dorm was only 6 blocks away from the house party, and he had tweeted just 2 hours before his disappearance asking someone to pick him and his friend Jacob and that they were lost. He actually tweeted this to a specific person, and the specific person that he tweeted this to said that Jake and Thomas arrived at his house, hung out for a bit, and then Thomas left. 3 days later, on the 23rd of September, Thomas's body was found 5 miles away across the state line in Moorhead, Minnesota. Now, police actually deny that he was an informant, but others say that he was an informant and that he was murdered by a dealer that he'd turned in, or by police after attempting a cover-up. In 2016, Andrew's parents, Tammy and John, filed a lawsuit against the state of North Dakota, as well as against Sheriff's Deputy Jason Weber, saying they failed to reasonably supervise him. Super recently, actually, like just last month, on the 15th of September, their lawsuit was dismissed by the North Dakota Supreme Court. In 2017, Andrew's law was passed, and this law requires law enforcement to train any confidential informants, and it also requires them to provide reasonable protective measures. It requires written acknowledgement that the informant may talk to an attorney and stop cooperating with police at any time. It also disallows the use of informants under 15 and also disallows campus police to use confidential informants. It also requires the Attorney General to authorize an independent investigation in the event that an informant dies. Okay, so that is basically all of the information that I have on the case, so let's go ahead and talk about theories. Now, the first theory is about Andrew's girlfriend. So Andrew's mum, Tammy, thinks she is the sweetest thing ever. However, she was the only person that was new to Andrew's life at the time, and you know, people knew very little about her. The family knew very little about her. His friends knew very little about her. There doesn't appear to be any motive. She isn't considered a suspect. Police said they did speak to her and that there was, you know, that she was ruled out as a suspect. This theory is like dismissed a lot. Police don't believe it's true. The family don't believe it's true, but I thought it was worth mentioning. I couldn't find any information on the girlfriend at all. And I guess it was put forward as a theory because people don't know much about her, and also because crimes and relationships are actually like a scarily common thing. The next theory is, of course, the one that we've already spoken about that was theorized by police, which is suicide. There are a lot of theories within this theory about why Andrew may have committed suicide, whether he was feeling overwhelmed by being an informant, whether he was feeling guilty by being an informant. Maybe he committed suicide so he wouldn't have to go to jail because he didn't want to cooperate with the police anymore, and he was just really scared of being arrested. Of course, I've already mentioned what police theorize happened, that he went to his parents' house to say goodbye, take their .22 caliber pistol, and then use that to kill himself. However, I don't know, I think there's a lot about this theory that doesn't make sense. The backpack does not make sense to me. I feel like that is something that you would do if you were trying to hide a body, not if you were trying to commit suicide. On top of that, he had a new girlfriend. He was 22 weeks away from graduating. He was hanging out with friends, and he was also looking for new jobs. He was out going around North Dakota looking for work as an electrician for when he graduated. Now, of course, there is the theory of murder, which is what Andrew's parents believe happened. He could have been murdered by somebody he was informing on, a drug dealer who maybe he owed some money, or it could have been a robbery gone wrong considering his wallet was missing. However, I'm more inclined to believe that the wallet was taken so that he couldn't be identified so easily, which leads me to believe it was likely somebody that he was informing on, just like in Rachel's case. And the last theory is that Andrew could have been murdered by a police officer. Some people theorize that maybe he heard something he wasn't meant to, and that's why police murdered him. However, I don't in this case think that that is the most plausible theory, but just something worth mentioning anyway. Okay, so that is all of the information I have for you. That is all of the theories I have for you, and I would love for you to comment down below and let me know which theory you think, why you think that theory, or if there's a theory that maybe I didn't present that you thought of while watching this video. I would love to hear that in the comments below, and hopefully I will see you guys in my next video. Bye guys!